I'm Laura Bonnell, and this is the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast coming to you from Detroit. Please subscribe and even rate and comment on our podcasts when it moves you. I learn something new with every podcast, and I'm always inspired by the people that are showcased here. We don't give medical advice. You need to connect with your doctor for that. I hope that this Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast educates you and sparks some volunteering or advocacy. The CF community needs people like you. Thanks to our sponsors, Viatris and Vertex, for their support. Today's guest is the unstoppable Jen Dunlea. She's an advocate, a fighter, and an all-around powerhouse. Born with cystic fibrosis, Jen has faced more medical battles than most people do in a lifetime, including surviving a rare cancer at just 23 years old. She's a two-time double lung transplant recipient, living with diabetes and gastroparesis, and still somehow she finds the energy to raise her voice and awareness for the CF and transplant communities every single day. And you might know her from social media, where she shares her journey with honesty, humor, and heart under the handle Jen Can't Breathe. So much to talk about, so let's get started. Welcome, Jen. Great to have you.
Great to be here.
I have talked to your dad via email for years, and it's great because you were going through so much at that time.
Yeah.
It's not like we were going to have conversations and be emailing back and forth. So I'm glad to see you. You have been through so much and you look amazing. And for anyone who's just listening, she's been through a lot, as you heard in the introduction. But I just want to start by going all the way back to the beginning, or finding out from you what cystic fibrosis meant to you when you actually realized everything that it means to have CF, like the life expectancy. Did it seem like, oh my gosh, this is big and scary? Or did you say, I got this? Like, how did you feel when you really understood what it meant?
Okay. Wow. Yeah. It might be helpful just to start at the beginning. I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old. So, which is kind of old for someone to be diagnosed with CF.
Because it's a genetic disease and you're born with it.
Yes. And most people, when they're born, they have gastric issues, and that's a telltale sign, or some pulmonary issue. I didn't have any of that when I was born. But my mom was the driving force behind trying to figure out what was wrong with me, because we would go to mommy and me classes, and I would pick up every single bug. And she had no idea why this kid kept getting sick. Or I would be running around the house, and all of a sudden I would just drop to the floor and pant like a dog for like 30 minutes. And we saw so many CF specialists, and everyone missed it. And it was actually my pediatrician who was like, hey, maybe you want to get our sweat tested. And that is when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
And growing up with CF, it wasn't something I was afraid of. Ever since I could remember, I was always told, Jen, CF is something you have, not something that is you. And growing up, every school year, I would explain to my class what CF was. I remember saying, CF is like a spider web. Every bug and everything that flies into it gets trapped, and that's why I get sick and I'm in the hospital. And that's why if you're coughing, I will move away from you and don't get offended. And I did that for years and years, and I would read Mallory's 65 Roses. You know that book?
Mm-hmm. I know her mom. Yeah.
Oh, you do?
And yeah, Diane Shader Smith. And that description of the spider web is a great visual, a great something you can visualize. That is a really good description.
And I still use it when I explain CF to new people.
Because of thick, sticky mucus that catches everything that's in your body. Yeah.
Yes.
Remind me how old you are now before you continue.
I'm 23.
Wonderful.
And I mean, I was doing okay. As okay as you can be with someone with cystic fibrosis. And especially since it's a progressive disease, meaning that as you get older, your body gets... CF is relentless. It attacks every single organ. And as time goes on, those attacks, it's harder to, rebuild. And so it gets hard. It gets really hard as you get older. But when I was about 9 or 10, I picked up a bug called MAC, Mycobacterium avium complex. And that's basically what killed my original lungs. And during that time was when I started to realize CF is more than just having to do breathing treatments and having to go in for tune-ups. It's something that is really scary and unpredictable. And I always knew that there was no, cure for CF. And I accepted that because that's something you just have to accept early on. And it's easy to accept when you're a kid because you don't really know how to fight back against that. But now I had no cure for CF and I had no cure for MAC. And that's when I was like, okay, this is very serious. And this really, really sucks. And so that's when I started to realize, okay, the life expectancy and how serious MAC was. I was 10 years old and I was 66 pounds. No, I was 13. When I was 13, I was 66 pounds. Completely oxygen reliant and was on so many meds. I lost my hearing in my left ear trying to fight MAC, and I couldn't win. And that's when I moved to Colorado because there is an experimental treatment. And that's how desperate we were because every children's hospital in California that we went to, they had nothing. There was nothing to help. So we went to Colorado. The treatment worked for a year. Then it stopped. And I guess that's when they had a conversation with my mom. I was too young to be involved in the serious talks, and I'm really grateful for that. But she told me pretty recently that's when they said, well, your daughter needs a double lung transplant or she's going to die. And so that's when we hauled it to Philadelphia for a CHOP. And even then, I still was so oblivious to the dangers of transplant, the complications of transplant, because I was really protected. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for being protected because when I went through my second transplant recently, I was the one having to sign all of the serious papers that said every complication. And when you're older, you understand more. And it's very scary to understand more.
How old were you at your first transplant?
I was 13.
So it was 13. Okay.
Yeah. And that was hard. The afterwards is hard. But that was for 6 years. I was a healthy, transplant. You're not getting rid of, your disease or CF entirely. You're adding a new one. You're getting a new disease. You're welcoming transplant into your life, which is immunosuppressants and surgery and complications. And for me, I developed a rare form of cancer and getting steroid-induced diabetes. And
this all happened at your first transplant?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you had no choice, but it's a heart that's...
Yes.
I mean, there's a great side because you're still here, thank God, right?
I went to high school. I went to parties. I did theater. I was a normal kid. CF, was kind of going in the rear view mirror. Transplant kind of became the center of everything. But CF just it didn't go away. I learned that the hard way when I caught MAC a second time, my senior year of high school.
When you say caught MAC, it's because there are things that are recalled that have this bacteria in them. Even shampoos, like in an average store, can carry this bacteria, or you can get MAC and other bacteria from things in mud. So just so people know, you could be taking a shower, there could be mold coming out with the water.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many.
You can get it from the air. It's everywhere. The water you swim in or you shower in, the air, the dirt. And I've never been into gardening. I've never touched dirt. Even as a kid, I was like, I'm not dealing with that. And I guess I'm predisposed to being very vulnerable to it. And that's kind of what started what I've begun to call the dark ages
of CF.
Of the past 5 years with chronic rejection.
Before we move on to that, did you ever meet your donor's family from your first transplant, or were you too young at that time to be interested?
I was very interested, especially because I was told that they can edit the size of your lungs, the donor lungs, to fit you perfectly. And as a 13-year-old that was 66 pounds and it was very small, my lungs didn't need to be changed at all. And they couldn't tell us much, but we all assumed it came from a child. And I really wanted to talk to the parents, and I just wanted to let them know how grateful I was and how sorry I was. I wrote them a letter. I never heard back. But that is completely okay because everyone has their own process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what they needed to do, and that's totally fine. But I just hope that they have found some sort of peace, if that's even possible. But I do still think about them all the time.
Some people have signs, or they feel like that there is a sense of the other person. Did you have any of that?
I did. I had some personality changes with my first transplant. I started to like scary movies. I was always too afraid. I was obsessed with every scary movie, every scary show. I felt a little fearless for a while. I don't know if that came from my donor or just from the new lease on life that I had. But with my second transplant, I have noticed a lot of changes and a lot of signs, which I can tell you about when we get to that part of the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have this first transplant, and did the kids your age understand everything you were going through?
No, they tried. And that's what's hard. Because with CF, we cannot be within 6 feet of another CF person because we can swap germs and other harmful infections with each other. And that is so isolating because you can't hug the person that truly understands what you're going through. You can talk to them online, but it's not the same. And especially growing up, I didn't know any other people with CF. But when I came to transplant, my friends tried to understand, and it was still very isolating because I had the CF history and then the transplant, and I almost became annoyed sometimes when my friends would complain about how their life sucks so much. They'd be like, oh, I want to die. I have this huge test coming up. I'd be like, is that what you're worried about? And it made me kind of feel like a bad person for a while, but then I realized, well, no, everyone has their different priorities.
And perspective, right?
And perspectives.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to acknowledge that, especially as people with CF and other conditions, that we do have different priorities and perspectives, and sometimes we can get annoyed. And that doesn't make us bad people, it just makes us human.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you're going along, everything is good, right? After your transplant
good.
for a while.
Yep. Besides the cancer and the
all that.
diabetes,
I mean, that's horrible.
All that stuff.
Yeah, geez. So how long did it go well for any amount of time, or did the cancer come immediately?
I think I was about a year or two in. I think it was my junior year. So that would have been 3 years.
Okay.
I was very, very lucky. It was caught early. We treated it and it hasn't come back. Um,
And that's a
but it
knock
was
on
very
wood.
scary.
Yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very
Yep.
superstitious
We'll
these
say
days.
it. Do the knock, say a prayer. We'll do it
Jinx,
all.
jinx, jinx.
Yes.
For the 6 years that I was doing good despite the cancer, despite the diabetes, and despite, being hospitalized for different random infections and there's this one time I had like 5 white blood cells. I was like in an isolated hospital room for a few weeks because I was so like, and they were just like, hey, just come in. There's something weird with your labs. And I was basically a bubble boy for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just life with it. And you get used to it. But I do consider those 6 years really good. I was healthy despite all of that. And that's what's really hard about when I went into chronic rejection is because I was like, I was given a taste. I had CF
Mm-hmm.
my entire life. 6 years of semi-normalcy, as much as you can get. Then it was taken away. I just didn't think it was fair.
And of course, it's not fair.
No.
And in those years, because you're so creative, and we're going to get
Yeah.
to all of your creativity and things you're doing, but in that time, were you writing? Were you thinking? Was your future opening up in your mind?
Yeah. I applied to college. I got into college. I was all set to go to college. I love writing. I've always been a writer. So doing the whole application process was really fun for me. I was going to go to school in San Diego, so back home to California. And then I got sick again with MAC. I developed this neurological condition called PRES. And right as that happened, I was in the hospital for a while and COVID happened.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it was just all of this stuff all at once. And then a few months after that, chronic rejection. So
And what is the neurological condition PRES?
PRES. So when I caught MAC again, it was a different strain. It was a more severe strain. So it was Mycobacterium avium abscessus. And they hit me hard with this very intense antibiotic. And no one noticed until it was too late that my body, my kidneys could not keep up with it. So I developed pharmacology where you're just attacked by all these meds and your body can't keep up. And then that led to this PRES. Can't remember what it stands for at the moment, but I didn't remember my name. I didn't know my mom's name. I didn't know my dog's name. I had to relearn how to walk and talk. I was talking. I was trying to tell people how I felt. And I was so frustrated because no one understood me. Apparently, I was just saying random words. Had to relearn how to write. It was a whole ordeal.
That is a lot. And I just Googled it, and it says it's a posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. Anyways, I didn't pronounce it correctly, but a neurological condition characterized by vasogenic edema in the posterior brain. I mean,
Yes.
you explained it beautifully, but
Mhm.
wow, that is. And so what does it just naturally end?
I was on a lot of meds to help my kidneys because I think at one point they were worried I was going to go into kidney failure.
Okay.
I was yellow, so I
Oh.
had and my liver was overwhelmed. I developed a condition called vanishing bile ducts, where the bile ducts in my liver disappeared. So that was the tannest I've ever been. So I took a lot of photos during that period because I was like, at least I'm tan right now, and my eyes are very tan.
Yes, you're very white like I am.
Yes, I'm
So,
porcelain.
yes.
And yes, it was very hard, especially having to relearn how to talk and walk. There's at this one point everything was numb. I couldn't feel certain parts of my body. And I was having a very hard communicating it to my doctors. And I asked my nurse, "Can you get me some markers?" I took off my hospital gown and I wrote check marks and X's all over my body where I could feel things. And I sat there naked and I waited for everyone to come in, the nurses, my doctors, when they did rounds. They had the shock of their life. There were interns with them. I'm sure those interns quit that day. I was lying there. I said, this is what I can't feel, and this is what I can. And I think the condition where you can't say the words is aphasia. So when I was talking to them, they couldn't understand. So I was like, I'm just going to draw on myself. And my point was made. And the only thing that actually worked was my dad brought in his back massager and massaged my body until I could feel again. So
wow.
you
Thank
should patent
goodness
that.
for parents, right?
Yes.
They're so in tune with.
Yes. And it was my mom who actually noticed that something was wrong with my brain. The nurses, the doctors, they didn't pick up on it. It was my mom.
Wow.
So I don't know what I would do without my parents.
Yeah. That is for sure. The only thing I can relate to that a little bit, I had a grand mal seizure when I was 6 years old, and it impacted my speech, but it's the same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
I would be thinking something and you would speak it, and I was 6. I wasn't drinking coffee at that time, but I remember saying there's ice cubes in my coffee, which I don't even know where that came from because I know I was thinking something else like, hey, can you open the hospital window or something?
Yeah.
You know, and that came out. So that, I as a 6-year-old, it was funny. I remember laughing, thinking, oh my gosh, this is so funny because I said something I wasn't thinking.
Yeah.
And, but at your age, and trying to relay how you're feeling and what you need fixed, oh my gosh, that would be so frustrating.
I was very frustrated, but I had some great doctors and nurses who, once they listened to me, we got back on track. And I had to miss graduation, but it was different because of COVID. It was basically a drive-through graduation.
Okay.
But I was a part of the IB program, which is the International Baccalaureate. So it's higher than AP. And so I was in the hospital. I watched my friends drive through graduation, and I saw my name appear on the screen. I wasn't there, but when I came home from the hospital, my principal and the director of the IB program at my school, they were in their robes. They handed me my diploma. It was so amazing.
That is amazing.
I had friends drive by. They were honking. They had signs. It was really great.
And this is, I think, where I connected with your dad and we started talking via email. You know, it's hard, even though I didn't know you, to hear about somebody with CF going through this. I think it's hard to hear about anybody going through anything, but I could so relate to being a parent and having a child going through this. So I really felt for your dad, and your mom, of course, but, so then you have to wrap your head around the fact that you're going to have a second transplant, as do your parents. And how are you looking forward to it at that point, just because it's hope again, or what was going through your mind?
I was very disappointed because I always felt, problems would come up. I would deal with them. I'd be okay. And I took my meds every single day on time. I never missed a dose. I did whatever was asked of me, every treatment that was painful or horrible. And it still happened to me. And that's when I really started to learn a lot about transplant and just life in general, that no matter how hard you try, sometimes things can just not work out the way you want them to. And I had known that, living with CF and also just being a person, but it just felt like something was being taken away again. Like with CF, I understood it in and out. Transplant, I really thought I understood it, and I didn't. So when they told me, the first thing was, okay, well, what can we do? What is the treatment? And they said, well, there's no treatment, but there's this thing called ECP, or photopheresis, which wasn't even thought of or made for chronic rejection for lung transplant patients. It's for different skin cancers. So basically what that was I went my entire life without having to get a port. That was my mission. I've had probably 100 PICC lines, millions of IVs. I was always, I don't want a port. I'm not dealing with that. For photopheresis, I need to get 2 ports at the same time. So one here, which I still have, and then here on the other side. Because they take your blood out. It goes into a centrifuge where they spin it so all the clots come out. They blast it with a laser and this medicine, which targets the T cells, which cause rejection. They kind of dumb them down to make them stupid. They treat that blood and they use the other port to return the blood back to you.
Oh my gosh, so much.
So I was like, okay, does that mean I'm going to become a vampire?
Good question.
I was hoping for it. I was like, is something at least fun going to come out of this? It took so much out of me, because they literally are taking blood out of you, returning it as fast as they can, but you feel exhausted and you can't be in the sun or you're very photosensitive. So I'd wear 2 pairs of sunglasses. I'd be covered. It was during the summer, head to toe. I'd come home. I couldn't have the lights on in my room. It would be pitch black, and I would just lay in bed for days until the next treatment. And I did that for a year because I said, well, I'm going to keep doing it until someone physically stops me, because there is nothing else to do. And during that time, I was being evaluated at the hospital I was at that point in time. And I was denied because I had to have a stent put in, because I had a blood clot in my pulmonary artery. And that was like an emergency surgery, and we didn't have enough time to research it ourselves. And it turns out that is hardly ever done for people with lung transplants in the event they need another one, because it makes the surgery so much more risky. So then I had to deal with that, and I felt betrayed again. I was like, well, why would they do that to me? Didn't they know this? Why would they make my life even harder? So then that's when we began applying. I believe I applied to almost every reputable lung transplant center in the US. I was accepted by 2. And that was very hard, because every time I would talk to someone, this one doctor, I'll never forget it. He said, everyone dies at some point. And I was 21.
Oh my gosh. Like he
and
thought, oh my gosh.
I said to myself, Jennifer, you better not shed a single tear. I stared that man down until we got up and left. I just wanted him to look at my face and just to remember that he ever said that to me. Because why would a doctor say that? Like, why? And then another center said, well, we will do your transplant, but we'll have to remove your esophagus.
Oh my gosh.
And my mom said, this girl loves to eat. That is not an option. We got up and we left. And at that point, I was on oxygen constantly. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair.
I mean, the pictures I looked at before doing this podcast that you posted, it's a night and day. I mean, you don't look at all the same to me just from
Yeah.
looking, you know.
Oxygen is magical.
Yeah, it's unbelievable where you are today.
I know. And I had been, so many terrible things were said, and I know that most of them didn't mean to say it the way they did, but you're denying someone a chance to live over and over. It affects you. And when I was at my doctor's, he's like, how about we try NYU Lingam? They just popped up on our radar. And my doctor, Dr. Andrew Courtwright, who was at Penn, he just left, and I miss him very much. He said, I know someone who is a part of the lung transplant program at Lingo. He worked with me, so I had like a little insider.
Nice.
And we set up the appointment. They looked at everything. They were like, okay, we'll talk to her. It was like, you know, in the romantic movies where like the music swells, like, oh, they've met their partner. That's what it was. But it was non-romantic. It was like a life-saving little romantic match.
Yeah.
And he said, we're gonna, you know, like the goal is we get you these lungs and we keep you up and running for 20 years. And months ago, someone said to me, everyone dies at some point. And now this man, Dr. Jake Natalini, was saying, let's get you up and running for 20 years.
Amazing.
And my surgeon, Dr. Chang, she looked at everything and then she looked at me and she said, yeah, we can totally do this. And I looked at my mom and then I looked at my dad and like we were all holding our breath. We like still couldn't breathe because we were like, and my mom goes, but you looked at everything, right? You saw her stent, you saw, you know, and she's like, yeah, I can do this. It'll be fine.
Isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible? It's like anything, but of course this is life or death, but it's like anyone you meet, if everybody could just say, yes, we can try, or yes, let's figure this out. You really want to be around those people.
Yes.
There's no time for the other people that are naysayers. There's a difference between being realistic and being willing to try or to learn or to make it happen. That's incredible.
It is. And I think I forgot to mention, but from when I started chronic rejection to the point where I met with Ngong, 4 years had passed.
That's a long 4 years.
Some people don't even get 4 months once they enter chronic rejection. It's different for everybody. And that's what makes it so tricky, is because you just don't know. I shot down, but I plateaued. And I think it was because I pushed for the photopheresis for so long. But I'll never know. I don't want to know. I'm just glad that I lasted that long. But then the story gets even crazier.
It does get crazier. And I did watch the news story. So I did. So yes, explain. So this time you sort of learn who your donor is, right?
Yes, I do.
So tell us how that happened.
Yes. So I was listed at Langone for about 3 months, and I started to get worse. And so I was hospitalized because sometimes when you're in the hospital, your score with UNOS goes up, and we were trying everything to get that score up, and I was relatively high. Something interesting also is that CF is ranked pretty high when you need a transplant. So if you're a CFer who needs a transplant, you're ranked higher. If you're someone like me who needs a redo, you're ranked lower. Even though I have CF, it's just how it is. And since I'm small in size and I was in the adult pool, that's also harder. So we were trying, you know, to hopefully get lungs. And at one point I did have a nurse came in and said, we think we have a donor for you. I just was like, cool. I rolled over and I went back to sleep. That's how bad I was feeling. Like I was so bad. I would have been jumping up and down at that point if I was able to, but I couldn't. I would just went back to bed after hearing that. So when I started chronic rejection a few years into it, I became aware of an organization called CODA, the Children's Organ Transplant Association, I believe.
Yes, that is
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
And
that's correct.
Rick Lofgren is the president, and
Yes.
we are now good friends because we work together so much.
Yeah.
When people need transplants, we suggest them because they're amazing and they're a nonprofit and you don't get taxed on the money. And the Bonnell Foundation, when we donate our lung transplants, can donate to them and in your honor and stuff like that. So, but yes, continue.
Yes.
They're great.
Both of you guys are amazing. And so my mom has never been big on social media, but because we were trying to share my CODA info, she posted on Facebook. And that's how she kind of reconnected with her sorority sister, Bridget. And they hadn't talked in years. Started to talk again, and she became aware of my situation. And her son is an FBI agent. And I was in the hospital, and my mom had actually caught COVID, so she wasn't able to be in the hospital with me. So she was at a hotel in New York. And Bridget's son got an email from the FBI saying a cadet had died at Quantico. And they were looking to direct donate his organs to someone in the FBI family. Her son knew nothing about me, but he sent the email to his family group chat because he was like, this is really interesting. I've never seen this before. Bridget saw the email and immediately thought, oh my God, I have to call Laurel. This could help Jen. She sent it to my mom. My mom, who is sick with COVID, and all the doctors know this, calls my doctor and she's like, I think we might have just found Jen lungs. And they're like, okay, sure. You found lungs from the FBI. And my mom was like, no, I'm very serious about this. And so they're like, okay, send us information. They sent the blood type. The blood type was a match. We were set up with a coordinator within the FBI. And within a day, my lungs were being flown in from Quantico. And Bridget didn't even know that my step-uncle just retired from the FBI. So that was, another connection. So I called him when I found out and was like, you have to write them a letter. You have to tell them all the good stuff you've done for the FBI and like get my niece these lungs. And it worked, I guess.
Aww.
And 24 hours later, my lungs are flown in. I was wheeled in. I said bye to my mom on FaceTime. We were both crying. My dad was with me. And I was already in the OR for 3 hours because what's so hard about redo transplants is that scar tissue forms, and scar tissue is like cement. So they have to very carefully take my lungs away from the cement. It took them 3 hours to get my lungs unstuck, and then that's when the lungs arrived. And that's when it started, and my total, I think I was in there for 10 hours.
Wow. I can't imagine how hard that would be that your mom couldn't be there.
Oh my God. That was my worst fear. But like, even when we see my doctors, they always joke with my mom, like, hey, we have some people, you want to help find them lungs? I'm so grateful to, Bridget and her son, and of course my donor. I did write them a donor letter. I have not heard back, but again, that is totally every family's decision. But at least I know I've always wanted to be in the FBI my entire life as a kid.
Wow.
And so when I was in surgery, my dad somehow managed to track down where the helicopter is touching down. So he got the footage of the helicopter touching down. and them taking the cooler out of the helicopter with my lungs and rolling it in.
Wow.
And my dad took this photo. It's my screensaver on my phone. As they went in the doors and the doors shut, a rainbow appeared over the hospital.
Wow. That's the best sign ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, when I saw that photo, I just started crying. I was like, wow, that has to mean something.
Absolutely, yes.
Hmm.
So you go through all of this and then you come out of it. Do you feel like you have your life back again? How is your mental health then? How are you doing? Because you've been through hell and back a couple times.
Honestly, I have been diagnosed with PTSD from everything that I've been through. The past 4 years specifically took a big toll. I think it was the chronic rejection comboed with the rejection of all these hospitals and then with COVID. Um, and it's been really hard to kind of leave that mindset of, oh, if I go outside, I'm going to get sick and something bad is going to happen. And especially being immunocompromised, that feeling has been even heightened. And I have finally talked to a therapist. My entire life, I've been so against therapists because I didn't want another
Really?
doctor appointment.
Okay.
It
That
was
makes
just too
sense.
much. But now I kind of realized, okay, I think I need to talk to someone about this. And my therapist is wonderful. She actually used to work in the lung transplant field. So it's perfect. I don't have to like explain the wheel to her. She understands. So that's made all the difference because I don't think I'd have the bandwidth to explain this is what a lung transplant is. This is what CF is. This is how it all works to someone. I just want to complain and not complain, but talk. But to talk. So that's one side of it. But the recovery after a second double lung transplant is very intense, especially because it was a 10-hour surgery. I had to relearn how to walk again for like the 5th time in my life. And I'm still in recovery. I just graduated home PT the other day, and now I'm moving to
Wow.
a PT place near me because I want to be able to walk confidently and not feel like I'm gonna be out of breath or not be able to make it. Because when I do go to New York and I have to go in between these huge hospitals, I use a wheelchair. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to set that wheelchair on fire or donate it, but I really want to set it on fire.
I bet.
Yeah. Some days are hard. I still have a lot of pain, but overall, I'm very happy to be alive and to have gotten my lungs when I did because they said if I didn't, it would not have really worked out for me.
How far are you post-transplant now?
I am 9 months.
So that is a short time.
Yeah.
In this time, though, you're doing amazing things. You started the Sick Chick podcast, right?
Yes, the Sick Chick Hour.
Okay.
Yes.
And Jen Can't Breathe. So tell us about these two things that you're doing now.
So, really just a week before my transplant, I started posting on TikTok to kind of raise awareness about what I was going through and just have something to do. And I also kind of wanted to be like, hey, anyone want to help me out? Here's my CODA site. And then what really kind of, tipped the scale for me with like, okay, I want to be an advocate. I want to do it online. I want to be the person I wish I had growing up, that I didn't have a son with CF and going through a transplant. I had no role models. Or not even a role model, but someone just to look at and be like, okay, here's someone else going through it. I'm not alone. Right before I went in, like literally an hour before, I said to my dad, I want to do the hot to go dance it was trending at the time from Chapel Roan. So I was doing the like HOTTOGO. And then I went like hot to go into a double lung transplant. I posted that. Then I went into surgery. And then when a few days, well, maybe a week later, my dad was like, hey, Jen, guess what? A few thousand people saw your video and they're all saying like, we hope you're doing okay. And I was like, really? I was like, really? There's people that are like interested in all this? And I got a comment from the American Lung Association, and I was like, okay, people, I'm not alone either. And in the hospital, I was having my parents take videos of me and posting it, so they were in charge of the account. I wanted to really show what the recovery was like, because it was hard. Some of those videos are even hard for me to watch, having to get up and use this gigantic walker because I couldn't support myself. And then I was moved. Once I left the ICU, I spent a month in their outpatient rehab center, which made all the difference, honestly, because it was hours of PT, and that's when I was first able to walk on my own. And we got videos of that, and I posted them. I was so happy. And people were happy to see, what I was doing, how I was getting better. And I also started to get messages from other transplantees or CFers saying, like, we're rooting for you and thank you for showing this, because no one else is showing this, or we're not seeing this as much as we should be. Because, people love to show all the good sides to everything.
Right.
And I was afraid to kind of post some of the bad parts, or not the bad parts, but the scary parts, because I never want to deter someone from getting a transplant or being an organ donor. But I do want to be honest that this isn't just what you see on Grey's Anatomy, where you go in and then 40 minutes later you're walking out of the hospital and you're perfectly fine forever. It's not the reality. And I just started to really love it. And I was getting messages from people whose family members were about to go through this, and that they were showing like their dad these videos. And he was like, okay, if this little girl can do it, I can do it. And I kind of, once I didn't go to college, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I wasn't going to be a graphic designer. I wasn't going to be a writer. All of these things that I was thinking about doing went out the window. And then I realized, well, my life has never been traditional. I don't need to have a traditional career path or life path. And I don't really think of like posting online as a career, but as something I'm really, really passionate about. And
people do make it careers. And that is storytelling. That is a form of journalism. Yeah. That is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. I just want to make as many people feel seen as possible, because I'm so sick of seeing, whenever there's an episode or a show and they have someone that's sick, they're always meek and little. They're not a fully realized person. I want people to see people that are sick or have chronic conditions as real people. And that's what we need to be seeing in the media, because that's where, honestly, a lot of people get their ideas of what it's like to have a condition or genetic disease is like. And that is not who we are, and we should be represented better.
So what would you say does fuel you to keep going? What is it? I mean, you're inspiring people, you're educating them. What keeps you going with what you're working on?
I don't know. I just think what keeps me going is trying to find new ways and new platforms for people to hear important stories and to understand what it's like to be asked to have a chronic condition, or to be chronically ill, or to have a genetic condition. So I created a podcast called The Sick Chick Hour, and I will be interviewing people with genetic conditions, chronic illnesses, about what their life is like but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a talk show. I tried to make it as much as I'm modeling it after like Jared Leno and Jimmy Kimmel. We're going to be playing a game. I'm going to ask them blunt questions, and it's not going to be sad. It's not going to be something that you want to listen to and cry to. It's something, here's another person. Here's what I can take away from what they're learning and their journey has been. I feel less alone. I want them to feel motivated and empowered by the end of the episode, both the person I'm interviewing and the person that's listening.
I think it's fantastic, and I think it's going to do great. I love the title. Great choice. Great idea by you.
Yes.
It's so good. So I can't wait. I saw the tease for it, and I was like, this is incredible. You're doing great things at 23, I have to say. And kind of in the same energy that you were just talking about as your Sick Chick podcast, I just want to ask you some kind of off the beaten path question, I guess, like something that people don't know on social media or something weird or funny about you. Like, what would you, as we wrap up this podcast, what do you want to leave people with? Because you're so much more than just your CF story, right? You're this fun, wonderful, talented and smart person. So tell us some other things.
When I saw the Barbie movie, I became almost empowered by it to reclaim my love of pink. So almost everything in my room now is pink, and I love it. I love the little things in life that you can look at and you can grab something that was not totally the message, but even though it was the message, I was like, after I saw that, I saw a pink pair of sunglasses. That's something I would have been afraid of because I didn't want to be seen as younger or girlier. And I was like, you know what? Being young and girly is kind of cool. So
it's very cool. And actually, I have to say that's very profound of you because pink and blue, right? It symbolizes girl and boy.
Yeah.
And it totally puts you in a category,
Yep. So I'm like looking around my room, and especially with the podcast, I chose the bow. It's all pink. Like if you look at the cover design that I made, I was like, yes, this is going to be super fun, super completely different than anything that I've listened to. I'm also, one of my favorite gifts I was ever given, I think I got this when I was about maybe 8, was my label maker.
Those good old label makers.
I used it the other day. I'm never going to replace it. It's so perfect. I'm so OCD. I got it from my mom, to the point that if I start a project, I can't go to bed until it's finished because I will stay up all night thinking about it. And I feel like that also helps motivate me to do things because I get tired because I'm still healing and the body takes so much energy to heal. When I want to stop working on a new project or making a video, my OCD will not let me go lie down. And so that's probably something I should work on, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. I have enough to work on.
I think that's a great point. I am so inspired by you. I'm so glad we did this podcast together.
Me too.
Everything you talked about, we're putting in show notes, the name of your podcast and link and all of that stuff. So
amazing.
Thanks for sharing just a little bit about you and your story. I mean, there's so much more to come from you. I'm excited to see it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for listening.
Anytime.
Yes.
We'll do something else in 5 years and keep track of where you're going.
Maybe I'll have you guys on the Sick Chick Hour. It'll be fun.
That would be so fun. I would be so honored. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
It would be fun.
It would.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Deal.
The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen,
It's not complicated.
who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrated, but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceutical, The Science of Possibility, and Viatris. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.